I'm going to take you through a series of controlled articular rotations today. CARs. This sequence is intended to be done every day, not for terribly high reps. In fact, even just one good, clean repetition of each movement is going to be of substantial benefit taken over a longer period of time. So with that in mind, we're going to start at neck and we're going to gradually move down. Okay, so with our neck CARs, we're going to tuck the chin slowly down toward the chest. We have 7 vertebrae in the neck. We want to feel like each of those individual vertebrae are flexing one over the other until we have reached maximal neck flexion. At that point, I'm going to rotate my head about an axis, approximating chin to shoulder. I'm now going to laterally flex my neck, ear going over shoulder toward back pocket, gradually transitioning into neck extension, drawing a line across the ceiling with my chin until my other ear is over the other pocket, tucking chin down towards shoulder, dragging chin across chest, resetting, flexing one vertebrae at a time, rotating maximally, laterally flexing, transitioning to extension, drawing that line across the ceiling once again, ear over shoulder, chin to shoulder, chin back to chest. Widening the stance slightly. Good strong bear hug will follow the same exact motions for the rest of the spine, beginning by flexing first through the upper part of the thoracic spine, descending one vertebrae at a time until we feel that lower back, sort of tailbone area begin to flex. At that point, rotate maximally. Laterally flex shoulder toward rear pocket, transition to extension, drawing a line across the ceiling with the elbows, shoulder over rear pocket, tucking elbows back down into ribs, transitioning back to the middle, standing tall. Once again, flexing slowly, flexing from top to the bottom of the spine there. At maximum flexion, rotating to the opposite side, laterally flexing, drawing a line across the ceiling, laterally flexing, rotating back to neutral. To shoulder blades. I'm going to plant the palms on the sides of my hips. I'm going to start by pushing the shoulder blades forward into what's called protraction. Maintaining protraction, I'm going to elevate the shoulder blades maximally. Maintaining that elevation, I'm going to pull them back into what's called retraction. Maintaining retraction, I'm going to depress maximally, protract, elevate, retract, depress. Shaking them out and reversing, starting with retraction, elevation, protraction, depression, retraction, elevation, protraction, depression. Moving to shoulders. Again, nice wide, firm base. My feet are rooted into the ground. I'll start with my palm facing away from my body. I'm going to reach across my body into shoulder adduction. Maintaining adduction, I'm going to transition slowly to full overhead flexion. At full overhead flexion, I'm going to wring out my shoulder by internally rotating the shoulder, turning the palm away from the body, beginning to extend the shoulder behind my body, continuing to internally rotate until I end with the hand by my hip, palm facing away from my body. I'll now extend extend the shoulder maximally. Take out rotation completely. Transition to full overhead flexion. Begin to externally rotate, in this case palm toward ceiling, as I reach the arm across the body and all the way down to a neutral position. From the opposite side shoulder now, palms away from the body, shoulders externally rotated as we adduct across the body, slowly transitioning to a full overhead flexed position. Wring out the shoulder with internal rotation and extension. Continue to internally rotate as we slowly transition that arm down to the side of the hip, finishing palm away from body. Extend the shoulder maximally. Take out the rotation completely. Transition to a full overhead flex position. Externally rotate and adduct the shoulder across the body down to neutral. Shake them out a little bit. We're going to do 5 axial rotations of the shoulder now. My elbows are at 90 degrees. My arms are at 90 degrees from my shoulder. And I'm going to rotate externally and internally for 1 rep. Rotate externally, rotate internally for 2 reps. External and internal rotation. External, internal rotation. External, internal rotation to neutral. To elbows, palm facing away from the body. I'm going to flex the elbows maximally. I'm going to pronate, turning my palms away from my body and extend at the elbows. Maintaining pronation, I'm going to flex maximally. Supinate, turning the palms toward my body maximally and extend to wrists. I'm going to take a fist. I'm going to ulnar deviate, moving toward the pinky side of my hand. Maintaining ulnar deviation, I'm going to flex palm towards chest here. Now I'm going to radially deviate, bending the wrist opposite the thumb side. Extend, ulnar deviate, flex, radially deviate, extend, shake them out, and we're going to reverse by radially deviating, flexing, ulnar deviating, extending, radially deviating, flexing, ulnar deviating, extending, and rest. I've got a PVC pipe here. A broomstick works great, a rig works great, but we're going to do some hip cars now. We just want something to hold on to for a little bit of stability. With hip cars, I will begin by pulling the leg across my body into hip adduction. As I do so, I'm starting to externally rotate my hip, which is to say, kind of pulling the calf, the arch of my foot across the body. Maintaining external rotation, I'm going to open the hip maximally into hip abduction. I'm going to now kick my foot back, creating internal rotation of the hip, transitioning to hip extension and neutral, and reversing, extending the hip. Now beginning to abduct and externally rotate, pulling the knee toward the ceiling, transitioning across the body into adduction, down to neutral, and switching sides. With the opposite hip, pulling into hip adduction and external rotation, maintaining external rotation into hip abduction, kicking the foot back into internal rotation, transitioning to hip extension, down to neutral, and reversing, extension, abduction and external rotation with the knee toward the ceiling, externally rotating and adducting across the body, and down to neutral. We'll sit. I'm going to take just a kind of grip here around my thigh, and we're going to work some rotations at the knee, and often sort of neglected range of motion and really important range of motion for true knee health. So what I've got here is my knee in a flexed position, about 90 degrees or so, and my heel planted on the floor. I'm going to externally rotate, internally rotate. Externally rotate, internally rotate. That's 2 reps. Externally rotate, internally rotate. Externally rotate, internally rotate. Externally rotate, internally rotate. Switch sides. Same starting position, external rotation. Internal rotation. 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 Now working both ankles together, we'll start by pointing the feet away into plantar flexion. I'm going to evert the foot, meaning pulling the outside of the foot toward the outside of my leg. Maintain eversion as I dorsiflex, pulling the foot toward the shin. Now transition the foot into inversion, okay, pulling the arch toward the inside of the leg. Now in dorsiflexion inversion, I'm going to maintain inversion as I plantar flex, evert, dorsiflex, invert, plantar flex, and rest. We're going to switch. Start with plantar flexion and inversion, moving into dorsiflexion inversion, dorsiflexion eversion, eversion plantar flexion, inversion, inversion dorsiflexion, eversion dorsiflexion, and we're done. With that grouping of movement, we've effectively tried to move every single joint system in the body. There are other ways to move all of those joint systems, but this is a pretty nice summary of potential range of motion for almost all of these different systems. Some food for thought would be, notice where you feel inefficiencies. Come back to me, let me know where were those inefficiencies. I can give particular exercise and particular strategies to try and improve where you felt that inefficiency. What I should have led with is that at no point should any of these movements cause pain. If you feel pain during a specific phase of one of these ranges of motion, you want to back off that movement just slightly, just enough that you don't feel pain. As an example, if I'm in a full overhead position here for my shoulder, and I start to feel pain anywhere in the shoulder as I'm transitioning to extension, I want to reduce the demand on the shoulder as little as is necessary to completely negate pain. So if I'm here and trying to do, my full range of motion causes, say, a pinch up here. What if I start out here? A little less demand on the joint. I've reduced the range of motion just enough that now I can still create that, in this case, internal rotation and extension, and finish that repetition with no pain. Any questions? You guys hit me up.